following video is intended for the general patient community. EATG aims to share its experience with the community-led research conducted within the PROMs project to other disease areas and build capacity on PROMs development at the community level. We wish to highlight the potential similarities and differences between PROMs in HIV R&D and PROMs in R&D for other disease areas. We aim to encourage other communities to advocate for patient and community involvement in PROMs at all levels, including conceptualization, development, implementation, and evaluation. Collaboration between patients and community groups and other relevant stakeholders is crucial to work towards standards of community involvement in all aspects of PROMs for research and development, including in regulatory processes.
This module is about PROMs, strengthening the patient's voice in treatment advocacy. HIV has become a chronic condition. Now that viral suppression for people living with HIV has been achieved, they need to be able to lead healthy, productive lives. And this should not just be about absence of disease, but also about wellness and quality of life. This module on PROMs aims to transfer knowledge from the HIV community and strengthen the voice of all patient groups in treatment advocacy in order to reach a higher level in participation of patients in all stages and processes that affect decisions related to quality care, which is crucial to achieving higher quality of life for every individual living with a condition. There are many aspects for high quality care. It needs to be safe, effective, patient-centered, efficient, timely, and equitable. Any person with a chronic condition should be looked at as a complete being rather than focusing solely on their condition. WHO says quality care consciously adopts the perspectives of individuals, families, and communities and sees them as participants and not just beneficiaries of health systems. Quality care means that services respond to the needs and preferences of people in humane and holistic ways. The International Alliance of Patients Organizations mentions that quality care should be focused and organized around people rather than their condition. It is really about the person. Whether we are talking about a condition because of a virus infection, like the case of people living with HIV, or we're talking about any kind of chronic condition, still, it is about the patient. PROMs ensure that care reflects what matters to the patient. PROMs is an acronym that stands for Patient-Reported Outcome Measures.
In short, PROMs are tools used to check on the health of an individual. Just like regular blood tests, they are used as a base on which doctors and patients take decisions to improve the health state of an individual. PROMs provide understanding into how people feel about their health and well-being over time and can contribute to achieving a higher quality of life.
Patients' reported outcome measures can be used to measure progress or deterioration of a person's situation over time and can be used to check on a person's outlook into their quality of life, or they can prompt responses to their experiences with their treatment or health services. In case of people living with HIV, this is related to their HIV treatment, but it also includes other non-HIV related issues that impact their daily lives, such as social stigma, depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, and other problems. For other chronic patients, quality of care is directly connected to the improving or maintaining a higher quality of life living with a condition. Patient organizations can use PROM development to facilitate better quality of life for chronic patients. Health services must become person-centered, and the patient's needs must become the center of attention to achieve this.
Person-centered means that patients actively participate in their own medical decisions, which is also referred to as shared decision-making.
Patients should be involved in all aspects of PROM development, from identification of a conceptual model to development of the design of the measurement tool, including validation, even to the implementation of the PROMs and analysis of the results. The patient is the expert. To understand better what patient-reported outcome measures are, we need to define what outcome and what measures mean. Outcome is the change on a patient's current and future health status that can be attributed to preceding healthcare. An outcome is not just a result, it is a change in the health status that constitutes to better quality of life over time. A change in pain levels, for instance, that practically improves the quality of life of an individual is an outcome. So the involvement of the patient is crucial to all stages that affect their health. This includes the input phase, how the resources are used, the output and productivity, and the outcome. PROMs provide understanding of how people feel about their condition, their physical, mental, psychosocial, and spiritual health, and overall their well-being, and thus they can contribute tremendously in a higher quality of life for patients.
One example of commonly used generic, non-HIV specific PROM is the EuroQOL PROM, developed by the EuroQOL Group, a registered charity. This PROM looks at 5 different areas of health: mobility, self-care, usual activities, pain and discomfort, and anxiety and depression, using a 3 or 5 level rating scale per question. It also measures overall health via a digital scale. It is easy to use as patients will only tick boxes either digitally, on paper, or orally through interviews. This is one of the most popular, commonly used and well-studied patient-reported outcome measures and has been used for a variety of conditions. This PROM can be used in many settings. One example is in clinical trials, for example assessing treatment effects by using EQ5D to measure health status before and after treatment to compare any changes in reported health status. The EQ5D data generated can provide additional evidence on relative effectiveness of healthcare interventions. EATG has conducted community-led research into HIV-specific patient-reported outcome measures with the HIV community and other stakeholders such as academics, clinicians, and the pharmaceutical industry to understand how HIV PROMs are being developed in clinical trials and medicine development processes. For this research, EATG has created a number of e-learning video modules for community use, primarily for the HIV community. The videos may also be of interest to communities from other disease areas.
From the literature review, we learned that PROMs are increasingly being used in clinical practice and research, including new medicines discovery. PROMs can be used as endpoints in clinical trials, but they must embody the characteristics of other types of endpoints.
An endpoint is the primary outcome that is being measured by a clinical trial. A clinical endpoint is an outcome that represents direct clinical benefit, such as survival, decreased pain, or absence of disease.
We learned that HIV-specific PROMs are important because they address issues that are relevant to people living with HIV. There are certain challenges in PROMs in research and development: timeline, attribution, homogeneity. In terms of timeline, R&D are short, but for PROMs to be useful, they need to be sensitive to what they are measuring, and they need to be responsive in relatively short periods. In terms of attribution, it's difficult to attribute some PROMs results, especially if the outcome measure can be affected by external factors. In terms of homogeneity, R&D subjects are relatively homogeneous, and it is difficult to generalize PROMs data used in R&D context for other groups. Let's look at the second aspect, patients' involvement in PROMs. On the left, you see the levels of patient and patient advocate engagement that has been adapted by Wilson et al., and these are compared to the greater involvement of people living with HIV on the right, or sometimes known as the meaningful involvement of people living with HIV. On the left, you see a hierarchy of patient involvement in PROMs that shows the highest level being the driving force. Under that, there are further degrees of involvement that are also important, but not as high level. On the right, you see the greater involvement of people living with HIV model. This is an older model from 1999, but you see a similar hierarchy with higher involvement. It's been a struggle to get this properly implemented for people living with HIV. The third aspect is the input from stakeholders. EATG spoke to several groups of stakeholders, including academic advisors, clinicians, pharmaceutical companies, and HTAs, health technology assessment agencies. The following main points were found. PROMs might become useful primary endpoints for medicines research and development trials in the future, but for the time being, PROMs are used primarily as secondary and exploratory endpoints. Challenges in using PROMs include the short timelines of medicines research and development trials, the homogeneity of trial participants, and the difficulty to attribute some patient-reported outcomes to a specific treatment arm of a trial. PROMs need to be linked to clinical outcomes in order to become meaningful to decision makers, including regulatory bodies and HTAs. PROMs are an important and increasingly popular way to gather patient experience data. PROMs can add value to improving the quality of life of people living with chronic conditions or diseases by preventing, identifying, and treating comorbidities. PROMs for HIV R&D are currently useful for secondary and exploratory endpoints. More research is needed to make PROMs more useful as primary endpoints under R&D conditions. Investment in patient organizations should be made to increase their capacity to co-produce and implement PROMs and to lead the advocacy for engagement in these processes.
If you're a person with a chronic condition or someone involved or working for a patient or community organization, we at EATG would love to hear about your experiences regarding whether you have had any involvement in the development of PROMs for medical research. Contact EATG using the links in the description of this video.